think the idea of what fitness or exercise should look like as well is a barrier. Like I think,
sure.
We need to you don't necessarily need to be going for a run around the block or, lifting heavy weights. I think for every person, it's going to look very different and every person's needs are different in terms of what you actually need to get your heart rate up. Like, I think for somebody who sits 95% of the time, just being upright is already going to be enough, and that's going to be their exercise potentially, or just moving their legs a little bit, taking a few steps, that is enough. So I think it's like it's just taking that first step, I guess.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Therabytes. I hope you have been enjoying all of the episodes. We've been loving all the feedback so far. And this week we've been talking about the F words, fitness. And so to go through all of this together, we thought it might be a really good idea to talk to some fellow clinicians and physiotherapists about what fitness actually means to them. So I am joined by two physios here. Welcome to the microphone and to the pod, Sophia and Matt. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much. Good to be here.
It is good to have you here because I do think that my intro to fitness last week, obviously I'm very passionate about it and it's not just one person. So I figured it's probably really good to get other people's thoughts about this as well. But before we get into it, Sophia, I might get you to introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about you and what you do.
Sure.
Yeah.
I had to think about this for a little bit, but I'm a physio and I've been a physio for 15 years now, which seems like...
Oldie.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had to really think about it. And I've had a broad experience in different places. I've worked a bit in the country. I've worked in the community. I've worked at PCH back when it was still PMH. Mm-hmm. And now I'm at Healthy Strides.
Yeah, quite a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've known each other for a little while now, hey?
We have.
Yes, yes. Very good. Well, thank you for being here. And I think your perspective will be really important. And now over to you, Matt. How about you give everyone a bit of an intro about who you are?
Yeah. So I'm Matt. I'm a physio as well. I've not been around for 15 years, but I'm in, I think my fifth year as being a physio. So and have lots to learn. Have learned a lot, but lots still to learn. I have worked a bit here at Healthy Strides. I've spent a year out rurally as well, up in the Kimberley region in Derby, for anybody who knows where that is, up near Broome, and then a few years at the Children's Hospital as well, just in a range of different areas, but spent a good chunk of time in the cerebral palsy orthopaedic space and the rehab mobility clinics.
That's cool.
And have learnt a lot, but as I say, still lots of learning to come in the many years to come of a career. Yeah.
I do love that. I think it's always really interesting to talk to people about different topics based on your experience and what you've seen over the time of your career as well, because things have changed a fair bit. Hopefully not too much in the 5 years. Well, hopefully we're doing the good stuff there. But I've been a physio for 20 years. Yeah, maybe a bit more than that, actually. It's 2025. So 22 years. And so I have seen things change a fair bit over that time too. But let's start from the beginning. I thought let's talk a little bit about what fitness actually means to you. Because fitness can mean different things to different people, funnily enough. So over to you, Soph. What do you think about fitness? What does it mean to you?
Oh, I think fitness has played different roles in my life, depending on what season I've been in. I think sometimes in life you feel like you have more time than other times to get around to prioritizing fitness.
Yes.
But you can definitely notice when you haven't made it a priority. It definitely has it affects other parts of your life when you don't make it a priority.
That's so true. You're in the thick of motherhood.
Yes, it's hard at the moment to find the time. And often when you're tired, it's not what you feel like doing. But if you happen to get out the door and just do something, it definitely helps you function better in other areas of your life. So it's so fundamental, I think.
That's wonderful. And I think it's so great that you brought it back to, your role as a person, as a mother, within the context of a family, what fitness actually does mean. And it can be really hard, but it is something that we try to prioritize. So that's always really important to make sure we think about that as a whole. Like, I know we talk about our kids a lot and we try to prioritize our kids a lot. But you also do want to make sure that you yourself are fit and healthy, and that impacts so many other areas of life. What about for you, Matt, either for yourself or for the work that you do? What does fitness mean for you?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of overlap between what it means for me and what I sort of think about in the context of the work that I do. I'd say I think a lot about, to bring in another F word, I think a lot about the future when thinking about fitness. I suppose for me personally, I think a lot about the future, and the world that we live in is very kind of directed to or encouraging of, I suppose, a sedentary lifestyle, one where there's a lot of sitting, maybe you're not eating the best food. And honestly, kind of sometimes the future scares me a little bit, and I get a bit worried about, conditions that affect the heart and the lungs and the blood vessels in the body. And there's a big part of me that, really wants to just improve or maintain my current levels of fitness to think about what my future long-term health will be. Kind of, I want to have a long life that, I sort of feel strong and healthy and able to do the things that I want to do.
Yeah,
and I think that does cross over into the work with the kids that we do in thinking that, lives that have opportunity to do things that people want to do, but thinking of the health implications of reduced fitness and reduced physical activity, and seeing how we can support an individual's fitness so that they have improved health and quality of life and can be healthier and stronger for longer.
Yeah, and I think that relates. It's good to always remember that for you, for your body, what you want, and how that relates to the kids that we work with, because ultimately that's what we want to try to do. And we're thinking about long-term health consequences. And I mentioned in the pod last week that children with cerebral palsy, as they become adults, are at 3 times of a risk of circulatory system diseases. So that's heart and lungs. And a lot of that stems from the fact that they sit a lot. And in fact, data that was published a little while ago now, which really got us all started in it, it's over 10 years ago, is they found that children with cerebral palsy who sit a lot, and they tend to be the kids who are classified within GMS level 4 and 5, so they tend to use wheelchairs, they actually sit for 96% of their day. So that's a
staggering.
Very few opportunities, And so if we're sitting that much, how can this then impact their life if we want them to be fit? So now just let's pivot to thinking about what we do in work and what this means for our profession as we're helping our kids. What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced in promoting fitness? And I guess from there, because we want to be solutions focused, what sort of solutions have you found in a way to get our kids up and moving? Who wants to take it?
Well, I think an obvious one for us is the kids who have the more limited ability to move by themselves, or how do we get them safely up, or even the kids who've got complex medical conditions, how do we get them up in a safe way and allow them to experience that sensation of not only being upright, but their heart beating a little bit faster and them getting a little bit more puffed. Like, these are things that we take for granted, but these kids may have never experienced this before, and so it might be quite scary for them. Yeah. They might be fearful of exercise, so that's a barrier as well. Equipment, not having the right equipment to help them be upright safely and help them to move. And then I guess just being out in the community, like, what barriers do they face? What do the families face every day to try and get their kids out there in the community to be active?
Because you do tend to use more equipment, don't you? Yeah. Matt, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I was thinking just in terms of that community barrier, one big thing is time, or even just thinking about it being as part of a routine. If it's not something that has been practiced or part of a daily routine before, if fitness isn't something that a family knows how to encourage and support, or that they haven't yet been sort of coached or upskilled as to how to do that, then it's not part of the daily routine, and there may not be time allocated in the very busy lives to actually dedicate time towards that. And so I think that's a barrier, but then at the same time, it's sort of a direction for intervention, which is trying to find different ways throughout the day, spread throughout the day, that improve fitness or work on fitness or consider things like how long a child is sitting down for. Are there any opportunities throughout the day that can be built within a routine that improve their ability to be up out of the chair, or for different kids who may not spend time in a chair, but how can they manage their fatigue and how can they still be active while not being too tired, and be able to function at school and still learn and develop and grow. And so I think time and routines is an important thing, and to be able to change the way that you do things, you have to think about how it can be built into your daily routine as well.
And the daily routine is a big one. Because what we're trying to say here is that obviously fitness is important. We need to find ways to prioritize it. How does that look like across the day? And so there are things like equipment. How do we bring equipment to the places that it can be most used? I know in my experience it has been, how do we work with the school so they can be more active during phys ed and actually participate, or during morning tea break? That's a golden 15 minutes of activity. Any other thoughts of how you've implemented that across the different places you've worked at, Soph?
I think the idea of what fitness or exercise should look like as well is a barrier. Like I think,
sure.
We need to you don't necessarily need to be going for a run around the block or, lifting heavy weights. I think for every person, it's going to look very different, and every person's needs are different in terms of what you actually need to get your heart rate up. Like, I think for somebody who sits 95% of the time, just being upright is already going to be enough, and that's going to be their exercise potentially, or just moving their legs a little bit, taking a few steps. That is enough. So I think it's taking that first step, I guess.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with that. Like there is some research data that's published that again got us all started on this path. Was they measured heart rate and the ability to how much oxygen you take, which is how we can measure exercise. And they found that in kids who tend to use wheelchairs a lot, if you actually get them standing, that alone increases their heart rate and their use of oxygen to a rate where it is kind of like a moderate form of exercise, because it's enough. So I love that you brought that up, because that can be all that it needs sometimes. And so when you put that in context of what you were saying, Matt, in terms of routines, we're not talking about let's go for a run for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We're saying throughout the day, if there's opportunities for a stand, if there's an opportunity to take some steps or to transfer with some steps, those are great opportunities, and we can celebrate them. And that's really relevant for our kids, I guess, who tend to use wheelchairs more. So we do have to keep that into consideration. Heart rate is one of the things that we measure a fair bit here. Like we do put on a heart rate monitor. What's the thinking behind putting a heart rate monitor on, apart from looking at what the heart's doing? Because there's other reasons why we do that, isn't there?
Yeah, for sure. It's something that is one way to track sort of exercise intensity, or how hard the body is working. That's a really nice measure, an estimate really of exercise and how much the muscles are working, how hard that child is working to either stay up in standing, or to say hold their head up, or to interact with the particular activity that they're doing. And there's different things that we can look at. And another part of sort of monitoring exercise or exercise outcomes is that it's important to look functionally as well. And, you've practiced a functional task and you've built that way or method of fitness into your day, and it's sort of saying like, oh, okay, does that now mean that they can do X, Y, or Z, or achieve this goal a little bit easier or more successfully? And so we can use heart rate with things like, wrist watches and more advanced and more accurate monitors, but also thinking functionally what the sort of possible impact of fitness practice or fitness routines can have on their day-to-day life.
Yeah. And I guess on that then, how do you know someone is fitter? How do we know that we've reached an endpoint? Not that there's such a thing as an endpoint. I feel like it's a constant one with fitness, because you do lose it, right? If you don't use it, you do lose it. So at what point, like how can we mark a point where we go, actually, fitness is good. I think we've achieved something here. How do we mark those points out? Any thoughts?
I guess there's a different ways, like subjective and objective ways we can do that. We've got our endurance measures we can do. We use the 6-minute walk test a lot here when we're working on endurance. So we can see what is the distance a child can walk or move in a 6-minute period, and then does that increase after an intervention period. And there's lots of other measures that you can use that we don't use regularly here. like the beep test or things like that, the kids can do as well. But then also subjectively, like, how do you feel, like how far can you walk? Can you walk to the park and back without having to sit down and rest? More sort of things like that the family can report about. Or if they're playing a sport, how often do they need to rest while they do that? That sort of thing can also give you an indication.
Yeah. It's not just about, again, I think when people think about fitness, maybe it's just the way I'm geared. I think that way. It's like, oh, if you're really fit, you can run 5Ks. If you're really fit, you can do these things. But I think it's about what you said, Matt. It's function. Like if you can do the function well, you can do it far better. It might be a sit-to-stand transfer to get from a wheelchair to the bed. That's the first time I think I realised when someone was trying to do that transfer and their heart rate went through the roof and they were exhausted. They couldn't do anything for the rest of the day. Clearly, fitness needs to be worked on. If you can do that transfer better without being so tired, great. Right?
And then being able to look at a heart rate response over time and seeing, okay, actually, now we're seeing that during that task, say that sit stand or walking from home to the cafe down the road, that they used to first practice this and the heart rate would spike up to 120, 130, but then actually after a good few weeks, a couple of months of practicing that you're noticing subjectively, as Soph was saying before, that they may be saying they're feeling less tired, but also B, you're looking at the heart rate and it's like, actually it's only getting up to about 100, 110 now. It's not spiking up so quickly or not getting, so their body, their heart and their lungs have adapted. They've strengthened in a way to be more efficient and to adapt to that kind of fitness challenge so that it's means they can, do that with a lower heart rate going forwards.
Yeah, I like that. That's really good. So let's talk a little bit about, what we've actually seen as well, because I think we do get a lot of international listeners and they often do ask about what it is that we do and how do we get kids up onto their feet? Are there cases where you can't get them up on their feet or get them moving? In the time that you've worked, in the different settings that you've worked at, have there been times where you find that there's no possible way to get them to increase their heart rate to work on fitness or to position them in a walker? Like, have you come across those sort of scenarios before?
Gosh, I feel like it's hard to think of one, actually. I think working at Healthy Strides in particular, we are pretty fortunate that we have very good equipment available to us. And we are very good at problem solving and coming up with different ways. So I feel like we haven't really not been able to get somebody up. I mean, it always looks different for every child. But I think in general, we have been able to get people up and get them moving in some way.
Yeah, I agree. I can't really think of a point, Matt. Can you think of?
Yeah, not in this sort of setting. I think we're constantly amazed when we do get children up for the first time, upright for the first time, and families like, I don't know how they're going to go, and you sort of do it, and you go slow, and you steady, and you ease into it, and you monitor, and you check in with the child's cues, and you check in with any sort of monitoring, oxygen monitoring or heart rate monitoring, and it's always been possible. The only time I can really ever think about it is when there are situations more in an acute setting when a child is really unwell in a hospital setting or they perhaps have particular restrictions around orthopedic surgery or something medical that's going on. That actually means for that period of time it's actually not safe or appropriate to get up and about. It doesn't mean they can't often have some form of exercise or activity, but there may be a period of time in which getting upright for an extended period isn't the best thing, but it's always thinking about what's next and when and how can we incorporate some sort of exercise, physical activity given those restrictions, and not letting that be part of a new routine that it's like, we're actually it was easier and it was, kind of comfortable to just lie in bed. So we're just going to go back to that. But it's like, no, what's the kind of the step out of this?
And I would agree. Like, it's all about that problem solving. Like, we've had so many cases now where, they do come through and you're like, how how are we going to do this? But I think we've always found a way, provided it's safe. You're looking at, making sure there's no pressure marks, making sure they can weight bear. The great thing about weight bearing is if you have systems that can take some of their weight, they can gradually get used to it, because obviously your weight is your weight and it can be heavy. If you don't have the musculature to support that, or the bone health to support that, you can keep people sort of de-weighted but give them that experience of being upright, and you can still get them up. But it's about being creative and using equipment, I think, and you can always somehow find a way, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. Have you noticed things change? I know, Matt, you've been out for 5 years, you've been out for 15 years. Have you seen things change over time about how we view fitness or how we get people up? Seen anything like that?
To be honest, I don't really remember fitness being such a focus in the early years of my practice. I think I come from an era when it was still very much body structure and function focused, or maybe activity focused.
Really worried, so more concerned about muscle strength, muscle range of motion,
stretching.
Like that.
That
was the main focus. Yeah, I agree. Yep, it was all about that, wasn't it?
So I don't think we ever really looked beyond that to go, listen, we need to think about fitness and long-term health and well-being and, being out with your friends having fun. I think that was never really the focus.
Yeah.
So definitely last few years.
medical in that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a nice change.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think there's some things that are really up and coming. They've been around for a while, to my knowledge, but in terms of the uptake and the use of it, so things like frame running, like race running, I think of that's a wonderful way to work on fitness while participating with friends or peers.
Yeah.
That's one area, and even just the mind sort of set shift as you sort of said, Soph, that thinking about fitness. So even swimming, like hydrotherapy, or a dance class. That's all ways that fitness can be practiced.
Yeah.
And
more people are more inclusive now as
well.
Yeah,
exactly. So there's these opportunities and there's ways to do it. And it's just kind of thinking about and considering and knowing the long-term role that fitness has in any individual's life.
Yeah,
really.
I love that. Okay, so last thing, closing. I mean, most people who tend to listen to this podcast for Therabytes are parents. What final words of wisdom or advice do you have for parents that you want them to really take away from today when we talk about fitness?
I think myself as a parent, I've become more aware now that as my kids get older, we want to just have fitness as part of our family life. We want to set a good example for our kids, and we want to make it just something that is part of what we do on a regular basis, so that it becomes part of their lives. It's not something we do separately to them necessarily all of the time. Is that we go to the park as a family and we walk around, we kick the ball, so that it just becomes part of your routine. So you're starting young and it's fun and it's a family thing. It's not a punishment.
Separate therapy thing. Yeah. It's part of all of it. And I think that's so vital, because it gives context for why.
Yeah.
Because when you're younger, and if it's hard because you're doing it in isolation of a context, why would you do it? And if you're not having fun with it, you probably don't want to do it very much more from there. Yeah, that's really great advice. I love that. Matt?
Yeah, I'd say that fitness doesn't have to be this big scary thing that it's like, oh, we're doing fitness training.
Yeah.
And that's a really lovely thing. I love what you mentioned there. So I think thinking of fitness not as being this big, scary, separate thing being built within your days, but then also thinking about get creative with how you can encourage and support fitness, and whether that's been, creative and problem solving through different equipment options, whether it's a frame runner or a standing frame or a walking frame, or is it some sort of wheelchair adapted sport? Is it swimming? The list goes on. And some of the things that families share with us is incredible as to what they've come up with that really supports, without even them necessarily realizing, but they have thought of this activity or this way to support a child's fitness without even knowing it's supporting their fitness, because it's something that's fun or with friends or with family, and it's almost a beautiful secondary effect. So I just encourage families to be creative and think about different ways that fitness can be supported and encouraged throughout the lifespan.
Yeah, that's great. And it's just those small opportunities incrementally through the day. And we talk about, consistency is always, it's always better to be consistent than just occasional.
Yeah.
And it's finding those things within your routine. So really encourage you to talk to us if you're here at Healthy Strides. Talk to your therapist. Let's problem solve and find these ways. And if you need equipment, then again, problem solve and practice in those pieces of equipment so that that's more successful when you're looking for opportunities to be fit. So thank you very much for joining me today.
It's been so fun.
Nice to have a
good.
chat about
Thank you very
fitness.
much.
Thank you. And to all of our listeners, I hope you really enjoyed that conversation. Hopefully there was things there that you could take away and think about for your family and your situation. But we'll be back again. So join us again for another episode of TheraBytes. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.